What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, guys, there is a new champion at welterweight. Jack Della Maddalena looked fantastic last night against Belal Muhammad. Nick and I are going to break that down starting right now.
Let's do it.
Nick, Jack Della Maddalena, a lot of people did not have him winning this fight. Interestingly enough, Fight Signal had him at a 94% chance of winning the fight, which, to be honest, I ended up picking Belal. I thought the Fight Signal was going to be way off on this one, but they clearly saw something, and a lot of other people did too as well. Jack's really good, man, and a couple of things that stood out to me that he did really well. Jack's footwork looked better than it's ever looked last night.
Agreed.
His footwork in the past has been sort of like, he was a bit of a plotter. He had good movement laterally and stuff like that. He was always finding the angles for his shots.
Right.
But he looked really light on his feet last night. He was very elusive and really made Belal second guess a lot of times and not even really fully commit to the takedown until the end of the fight. What are your initial thoughts on Jack's performance?
Man, I was really looking forward to breaking the X's and O's down to this fight because Jack looked so good. And I picked Belal to win this fight as well. But I was not expecting Belal to go out there and not wrestle. And I was expecting Jack Della Maddalena to come in a little bit more cautious with his just entries and ability to get into boxing range. But man, he showed a lot of tenacity. And one thing that really stuck out to me, of course, his head movement's good, his footwork is good, and his hands are clean. But his boxing defense and his striking defense altogether was so crisp. He was able to find just small angles. And then the one key detail that really changed everything for me, and I think it's the difference maker in this fight, was the fact that Belal didn't shoot until about the end of the fight, fourth or fifth round.
Yeah.
Right. So he waited for a while. The main reason for that isn't because Belal just thought he could strike with JDM. I think he was confident at first, but would have liked to take the fight down after about the first or second round. But JDM was so good at matching the level change feints of Belal. And what he was doing was essentially squatting. You know, the way it works, my old boxing coach, may he rest in peace, he would always say, right before we were training, right before we're sparring, right before a fight, he'd go, when in doubt, duck.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a simple little thing, but what Jack was doing was a simple version of that. He was just ducking whenever Belal would sort of change levels, and he made it look more like a roll, but truth be told, he was just changing levels, and that's such a good way to negate a wrestler's takedown entries or their feints. When they decide to change levels and shoot in on you, if you don't match them, they're now coming in on a taller opponent, and that's much easier for them to get under you. But
especially Belal, who likes to do a lot of doubles and singles and stuff like that. His takedowns really rely on those level changes.
True, right. He's not the kind of guy that's going to, get into a body lock and trip you in the open. He's going to try to push you over to the cage and then work from there to drag you down. He wasn't showing any of that for Jack. And Jack's ability to just keep it striking, keep it standing, and stay long, right at about the 2-minute mark of round 2 is when I saw just everything click for Jack. He fell into a rhythm, and you could see everything was just on for him. The oral level was there, as the kids say, but also the minor stance switching, the minor angle changes he was making to find clean shots on Belal. The round 2 and 3, I would say Belal landed the more damaging, bigger shots, but they were few and far between. Jack was putting together really good shots, and while Belal's got a head made out of granite or something, he was still getting tagged by those, and Jack was able to maintain that perfect range that he likes, controlled the fight more than I thought he was going to be able to. Generally, when you've got a guy who's competent on the feet like Belal and knows how to get the fight over to the cage and eventually to the ground, you do have that person controlling the fight more minutes controlled than the other person. But Jack was able to use really good striking, really good evasion, and of course, like you said, the footwork to just keep himself away and keep peppering Belal all night long. Of course, Belal had to switch it up towards the end, change the game plan for the championship rounds, and he started looking for takedowns. A couple of them looked pretty good, but Jack is just so good at defending, and Belal, at that point, they were both so slippery, both pretty tired, and he had already been beaten up pretty good. So I thought it was a great fight. I thought Jack really did prove to the world that he's the best welterweight in the world, and I don't think a lot of people thought going into last night that Jack was the best welterweight on the planet. I don't think that most people thought the best welterweight on the planet was fighting for the welterweight title last night. I think most people think it's still Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Yeah.
But after last night, We're looking at a different
Jack staked
170.
his claim, yeah.
Right. And one thing I will say, I just want to compare 155 and 170. 155 has always been the creme de la creme of UFC divisions. And star-wise, skill-wise, all of that, it matters the most. But recently, with Khabib and Islam taking over the division, it's been like, okay, there's one really good guy, and then everybody else is even Steven, and the contenders will be able to duke it out, but there's one guy that sits above them all. 170 is different in that I truly don't know who the best of these top 5 or top 6 guys now with Islam moving in, who the best is. And I think on any given night, it could be a different person. I can't say the same thing for 155. So Jack, man, he's got a lot to prove, but I think that belt just put a massive target on his back.
Yeah, I think 170 has become the new 155 in a lot of ways as far as the depth of the division. Because, I mean, if you think about it, the last couple of years for Islam, it's either recycling people that he's already beaten or bringing up 145ers, even though Volk is a legend. I mean, he's still a 145er at the end of the day, and they were talking about Ilia Topuria. We don't know what happened last night is going to change all that. But when you think about 170, you have Jack now as the champion. Belal lost, but I mean, Belal went all 5 rounds, still looked pretty damn good in the fight. You know, had certain moments, and he certainly lost, but he had his moments.
For sure.
He's still very much in the top 5. He's still very much in play. You have Joaquin Buckley, who's now going to get his crack against a former champion, a former great in Kamaru Usman. You have Ian Gary, who just looks spectacular. You have Shavkat, who is making his way. You know, the injuries are kind of what's holding him back. Otherwise, he would have been in there fighting last night. Sean Brady has gotten himself back on track, looking really good. And oh, by the way, Islam Makhachev now has a clear path to 170 that now that his buddy is no longer the champion. So I think in a lot of ways, 170 right at the top might be the most stacked division in the entire sport right now. But I want to talk about a couple of things that I saw out of Jack that's going to make him a problem for anybody in the division. Taking a quick break from this episode, guys, to let you know about today's sponsor, Better. If you're a fight fan like me, I know you're watching every strike and every takedown. Why not bet on it while it's happening?
And with Better, you don't have to wait for the final bell. You can bet on takedowns, strikes, and ultimately how the fight's going to end.
And for new users, there's amazing promos that come up every week. For example, if you used the promo code Barnhill last week and Valentina Shevchenko landed just one significant strike, you cashed in. And right now, guys, Better is matching 100% of your deposits up to $77 when you use the promo code Barnhill at sign up. See you at the counter, guys. Now back to the conversation. One, his timing, tempo, and rhythm is very hard to predict. The way he uses feints was beautiful last night. He uses, and he was almost like throwing out like a feeler jab to get Belal to parry it, and then he would feint again like a straight and then come with the hook. I mean, there was some beautiful things that he was doing,
layers
that really show the depth of striking knowledge that he has. The other thing was, I said his footwork, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, he was a plotter a little bit before. He always found his angles, but he was kind of a little bit heavier on his feet. Last night he looked very light. He threw in some really nice head kicks, a lot of really sharp things out of Jack, and then of course the excellent takedown defense towards the end of the fight. And as you said, there was takedown defense even in the earlier rounds because he's mirroring the height of Belal. So when Belal ducks, he ducks. And that makes somebody who may otherwise shoot for a takedown potentially think twice. So there was some little nuggets like that aren't so obvious to see on the screen, but they're little things that he did that show you the amount of ring intelligence that Jack Della Maddalena possesses.
Right. A lot of people that watched that and they saw Belal not shooting for takedowns. No, you were seeing him attempt to get inside and attempt to close the distance with takedowns and body locks and whatnot. But that level changing from Jack was just the neutralizer, and he wasn't able to actually, sell out for a true takedown attempt until round 4, which speaks volumes to what Jack was doing.
Yeah, and I think one of Belal's big mistakes in the fight was really not selling out for the takedown earlier. He said in some of the build-up press conferences and media interviews and stuff like that, I saw some clips surfacing where Belal's saying, look, I don't need to take this guy down to beat him. I'm a better striker. I'm just going to beat him on the feet. And if I have to take him down, I can easily do it. Well, that proved to not be so easy. And then in the 4th and 5th round, when he really did start selling out for those takedowns, it became much harder because Jack had, certainly if you take 15 minutes of punishment and you're slippery and you're tired, it's way harder to take somebody down than if you're fresh, not slippery, and haven't taken a beating. And I think it was between the 4th and 5th round, if I remember correctly, where Belal said to his corner, I'm trying to get him down, but I can't get, it's too slick, and so I can't get a good grip on him. So it was almost like a little too little too late for Belal Muhammad last night, and it ended up costing him the fight. Belal also, by the way, granite chin. I mean, both guys. I mean, I think it was the 2nd round, Belal threw a head kick to Jack when Jack was ducking, and my God, Jack just took it in stride and then started flurrying back on his own. Like it was a great fight. You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say, maybe it's not such a limb. This was the most exciting Belal Muhammad fight I've ever seen. Unfortunately for him, it was just he was on the wrong end of the decision.
100%. And I will say that whole theme sort of carried out through the whole card. Remember, UFC Canada, sometimes they're a little, they leave some to be desired.
Yeah, some of those cards have been real light in the past.
And Dana didn't show up for the post-fight press conference, and you know what the rumors are saying, it's because he didn't sell out, he doesn't have a bunch to promote. No, I just think that maybe it was Mother's Day and he had to catch a red-eye flight back to Vegas. But I totally agree with you. Belal Muhammad looked so good, and the fight was so entertaining. Like, he was cracking Jack early on. He was landing some great strikes of his own, and up until about round 3, it was relatively close. And not for 1 second was I bored during that fight. And it's not because it was exclusively a striking fight. There was all sorts of game plan and posturing going on, but Jack's game plan was just able to take control of the fight. And that's what I found so interesting, because Belal Muhammad came out, and it's funny because I was saying this before the fight, and I do believe it's true. Belal Muhammad one day will be appreciated.
Yeah, I think he will be. Yeah, he should be.
It's like one of those things. Remember, Aljamain Sterling wasn't really loved as the champion, but now people love Aljamain Sterling. It's just one of those things. Like Belal Muhammad, Aljo didn't get near that much hate, but Belal Muhammad, He came out, he fought like a dog, he put his belt on the line against a guy who most people didn't think was the true #1 contender, and he came up short. But he shouldn't be one of those guys that just gets chunked to the back of the line and never put into contendership again. I think he's still a meaningful guy in the top 5, and I think he's going to be a thorn in the side for anybody that thinks they want to
get into the top 5.
Think about, Gilbert Burns is fighting Morales next. Morales versus Belal Muhammad. If he was able to beat Gilbert Burns, that's a fight, but that's not an easy fight. Somebody's might just very well go.
Yeah.
Belal is one of those guys. Now he's a former champion, so he has the confidence and the experience level of that. That's a caliber that the UFC rarely sees. So I think Belal Muhammad, coming off of a loss, losing his belt, is going to come back stronger and more dangerous than ever. But yeah, I just think that Jack has his number, and there's a couple other strikers in that division, after seeing the blueprint that Jack laid out, that would be able to now beat Belal, that I don't think otherwise would have beaten him if they didn't get to see how Jack was able to do it.
Yeah, and the very likely next fight will be Islam Makhachev. That's already, Islam's trying to make that on social media right now, and that's going to be an incredible fight, which we will break down in a video to come in the next day or so.
Yeah.
But one thing before we wrap, I just want to say 170 right now, you have what makes it so cool to me is you have all these really great top contenders,
right?
But you also have a lot of meaningful former champions just floating around in there.
Right.
So now you have Belal Muhammad, former champion. He's going to be in the top 5 still. Kamaru Usman, he's squared up with Buckley. You've got Leon Edwards still floating around. You have people that were the champion not that long ago that are not just like 40-year-old people showing up for a paycheck. These are people that are still meaningful in the division,
right,
that are still, testing these young guys, as it were. And
right.
Gilbert Burns, even though he's not a former champion, Morales is going to be quite tested come next Saturday.
100%. Yeah, the thing about welterweight is it's firing on all cylinders right now. And with the addition of Islam Makhachev, which the writing's on the wall, that's what's going to happen. Him coming up, now you're talking about one of the top 3 draws in the sport, active current roster, jumping into your division. And we've heard people like Ian Gary say, it's all about the merit. It's all about who deserves it the most. And if Islam Makhachev decides he wants to come up, he's done enough at 55. He deserves the immediate title shot, which is funny because if I was a contender at 170 and I heard the way Islam was speaking about Ilya, saying he needs to do some work at 155 before he gets the opportunity, I would be doing the same thing to Islam, knowing full well Islam has multiple title defenses and truly has nothing else left in the division. Ilya can't say the same, but when you're talking about selling fights and talking trash online, that's what I would be going with if I was Ian Gary or somebody else. But Ian Gary, love him or hate him, he says what he feels, and I believe that he's right in saying that Islam would move right into a title shot. But it does sort of suck for him and all the other contenders, because if this guy does decide to come up there, now everybody else is on the waiting list. The division becomes a logjam. And that is sort of what I want to talk about when we break down the next video, is I don't think the UFC is going to let Islam go champ. I believe if Islam Makhachev moves up to 170 to fight JDM, we have seen him fight at 155 for the last time. And
No
he's
doubt.
he's gonna build his body, build his frame, and match his endurance for a 170 frame that he had with 155, and he's going to forget that division totally. If Ilya wants it, he's going to have to move up 15 more pounds to get that fight. So, yeah, I think that Ian Gary said that Islam deserves the title. I think Islam's going to get the title shot. I can't wait to figure out what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and where it's going to happen. But, yeah, that's a very interesting thought for me. And Ian Gary might have just screwed all the other top 5 170ers out there that were thinking they might get the next shot.
I think that's a pretty good point. We'll save the rest for the next video, guys.